Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about how to handle disappointment in midlife because one thing's for sure, feeling disappointed is part of life. So let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle with over 1 million downloads and counting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified life coach and midlife clarity expert, and I am so glad to be here with you again. Now, I'm just back from a fun business trip on a cruise down the west coast of the United States. We left out of San Francisco and sailed out right under the Golden Gate Bridge during sunset. I didn't expect that. It was a really fun surprise. So it really was delightful to start my adventure off like that with a surprise and just such beauty. And it really is good to get away, that's for sure. So if you are listening in real time, you'll note that my trip coincided with the election. And like many elections, you can have strong opinions about who you want to win. It was interesting to be on a cruise ship during this national event. Honestly, I was a little apprehensive about the timing, but it turned out not to be a problem. However, it was distracting for many people, and it's no surprise that some were quite disappointed. In general, it's hard to avoid the feeling of disappointment with 100% success because, as I mentioned, it's part of life. And in midlife, you might feel a strong sense of time sensitivity as well, almost like it's kind of like you can't risk feeling disappointed because there's less time to fix it. There's less time to correct. So whatever's going on for you, you're not alone, and feeling disappointed is one of the many feelings you'll experience as a human. For example, you may be disappointed by current events going on in your town, city, state, or province, country, or in the world. Or maybe you're disappointed by your job, your family, your relationships, your vacation plans, your friends. The list goes on. The bottom line is that there's no shortage of opportunities to feel disappointed and also many opportunities to figure out how to cope with the feeling of disappointment. So we're going to take a look at how to deal with all of this. And I know you might be disappointed that that's the topic today, or maybe you're excited that we're going to take a look. I know it doesn't sound super fun, but I will do my best and I'll bring you some good examples. And remember, the whole point of the podcast is to help you love your life again after 50. And we do have to deal with negative emotions. It's just part of the plan, right? So like I said, I'll do my best. But just quick, before we dive into this topic, I've got a question for you, followed by some free help. And here it is. Do you sometimes feel older, but not wiser? I totally get it. You usually know what you want. But something is different this time. You feel stuck. And it is so weird when you don't know what you want or how to get there. Every day can kind of feel like you're wasting valuable time just spinning in confusion. Just thinking about the same stuff and not coming up with a plan or a direction. You wish something would change, but nothing changes or moves forward because of that spin. And here's the thing. It doesn't have to be like this. You can still love your life again, and I've got just the thing to help. I created a quick 9-minute Get Unstuck in Midlife video training, and it will help you change how you see your life after 50. I like to think of it as the girlfriend's guide to midlife. You'll discover the secret sauce to being happier as a woman in midlife. You'll also learn how to feel empowered to have the answers you need to get excited about your next chapter. It's free and it's for you. It's basically the inside scoop to learn to love your life again. The Get Unstuck in Midlife video training will guide you to create the life you want with clarity about getting unstuck, figuring out what you want, busting your limiting beliefs, thoughts about aging, sources of personal joy, relationships, fulfilling transitions related to work and retirement, and becoming the woman you want to become. And there's more. It really gets you thinking. So to get instant access to the free video training, head over to www.girlfriendsguidetomidlife.com and it is yours. Okay, so let's dive in and start with the definition of disappointment. The Cambridge Dictionary defines disappointment as the unhappiness or discouragement that results when your hopes or expectations have not been satisfied, or someone or something that is not as good as you had hoped or expected. Oxford Languages defines it as sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. So basically, when you have hope and expectation about something and it doesn't happen or it's unfulfilled, you can feel unhappy and sad. You can feel disappointed because of the way you interpret something or someone or their actions. Disappointed, feeling that way, is like a big lunch bag letdown. Do you like that expression? I do use it. It's a big lunch bag letdown. But sometimes it's profound, like a huge disappointment, like it really rocks your world. Other times it's easier to manage, like a small d disappointment. But regardless, disappointment can leave you bummed out, or worse, seriously off, seriously shaken, seriously let down. Now, something I always do when I prepare a new episode is to do a quick search and see if I've talked about the topic before or perhaps wrote a blog about it. And sometimes I don't remember. So I did that with the disappointment topic. And I found a blog that I wrote called The Summer That Never Was. Can you guess what it was about? It was about COVID. It was the first summer of COVID. And I was supposed to be in Italy that summer. Every conversation I had with people who asked me how I was doing, I led with, I was supposed to be in Italy. I was sad. I was disappointed. I was frustrated. I was overwhelmed with a sense of lack of control. Everyone seemed to be canceling things left, right, and center. Everybody was bummed out big time. Now, in the blog, I talked about the doom and gloom, how the doom and gloom train was picking up speed, and that I was so tired of it. Like it had been a few months with COVID at the beginning. It was so scary. And I was really tired of the heaviness of all the negativity, everything that was being canceled, as the reality set in of what life was going to be like. I also shared what I noticed, that people were getting super clear about their priorities and things that they could control. They were starting to put effort there because there was so much. Remember that feeling? Like there was just so much that we couldn't control? And we were, at that time, what I noticed was we were really starting to put some effort there. And that's the thing with disappointment. You can start to determine what you can control and what you can't control and decide how to proceed based on those facts. Now, if you're a regular listener, you probably appreciate that there are facts or situations that just are. And there are your own actions and behaviors that you can be intentional about. You can also be intentional about thoughts and feelings. But the thing is that it's different. The way you interpret what's going on is critical because that's related to how you feel. So you have to sort out what can you control, what can't you control, what can you be intentional about. Can you relate to that? I think we all learned a lot about how we coped throughout COVID times. It was a very unique and difficult time of our lives, something we all have in common to some degree. Now, when I was thinking about all of this, I remembered another time about 15 years ago that my husband and I had planned what felt like the trip of a lifetime. It was a 6-day whitewater rafting trip with some time in Las Vegas and Sedona. So we were going to be in the Grand Canyon on the water with also some time at the front and the back end with Las Vegas and Sedona. And I was beside myself with excitement and anticipation, and we had to book that trip way in advance. At the same time, we were also dealing with tremendous stress and sadness related to a family member's illness. Over time, it became obvious that we may not be able to go on this trip because we couldn't leave in an emergency. Like if we were on the water, on this trip, camping, and being in a whitewater raft, would we be able to get out of there? Would we be able to be reached? Would we be able to be airlifted out or helicoptered out? And I thought we would have the option if there was an emergency. And I even called to confirm. And I learned that during the whitewater rafting trip, unless it was my life or death situation or my husband's life or death situation, the resources in the canyon were too scarce to even book a helicopter privately. So we canceled the trip. And at that point, I had never been to the Grand Canyon, so I really didn't have a good sense of the situation. But it was definitely a situation. It would have been very difficult to be reached, and it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to get out unless, we had a serious health situation ourselves. And I got to tell you, we canceled the trip, and I was incredibly disappointed. I felt like a 2-year-old on the verge of a temper tantrum that didn't make any sense because of the reason for the cancellation. Obviously, a close family member's serious illness was more important. There was no question that we were canceling the trip. No question that that's what was going to happen. And no regret, no hesitation. And yet, those feelings of disappointment were alive and well. I saw how I was thinking and feeling, and I didn't like what I noticed. I didn't like it. I didn't feel good about myself that I even had those feelings. So I challenged myself. I wanted to plan something else that was short, close to home, doable, fun, and memorable, given the uniquely sad family situation that was going on, and it was going on for a long time. So I wanted my kids to remember something positive about the summer, something more than how sad that particular summer was. So like I said, I challenged myself. It wasn't easy to come up with an idea, but I did eventually land on the idea that we could go away for a long weekend, and if there was an emergency, we could get home if we planned something that wasn't too far away. So we planned something 3 hours away, and then that attached to something an hour and a half away. And it was just a long weekend. And it included a hot air balloon ride at Letchworth State Park in upstate New York, and a day in Niagara Falls with my family from Pennsylvania. That was it. And I have to say, it worked like a charm. It was very different. It was different enough from what we were experiencing and how sad everything was. And it was super memorable. It was like it lifted us up for just a tiny, tiny period of time. And it really was different. I had never been, my family, none of us had ever been in a hot air balloon. And it was a lovely, lovely family visit with the other side of the family. And I did one other thing that summer. Again, I mentioned I challenged myself. So I thought, what can I do? I thought, okay, I can still focus on vacations, but maybe past vacations. So I took an art class, and it was based on photo collage, resin, and encaustic wax. So this is all stuff that I hadn't really done before. And so since I couldn't go on the Grand Canyon adventure, I used photos from a recent vacation in Cape Cod like a year or two before to base the art projects on. So I got to go deep into the photography from a nice time in Cape Cod, and I still kept the magic of summer vacations alive, and it really made a huge difference for my emotional well-being that summer. So I was able to do something for myself and something for my family and still show up the way I wanted to show up with what was going on with the family member who had the illness. It was incredibly stressful, and I do feel good that I was able to experience a whole range of emotions and really take care of myself. So I hope that these two examples helped you start to think about disappointment a little more broadly. There's also disappointment with people when you have expectations about people, with people, and you feel let down. But today's episode isn't really going to focus on that so much. In fact, I think I've done an episode or a blog about that, and I will definitely mention it in the show notes. But the bottom line of what I want to focus on today is what I mentioned at the beginning. It's super important to understand what you have control over and what you don't. And that's the same with other humans and expectations. But I just wanted to focus on these different types of examples for this episode. There's a factual black and white element, in whatever it is that ultimately created your disappointment. But there's something else that's important. It's your interpretation of the thing or situation. Oh my, all of my pets are now standing around me. Nico is like breathing heavily and Dee Dee tweeted. So I don't know if you're able to hear any of that, but the door was closed. I don't know how this always seems to happen, but I like to share it with you because this is the reality of making a podcast. Anyway, what I was mentioning is that there is this factual black and white element in whatever it is that ultimately created what you're disappointed about. There's something else that's important. It's your interpretation of the thing or situation. Your interpretation is made up of thoughts, the way you think about whatever it is, your job, your boss, the election, your vacation plans, a missed opportunity, or whatever. And that's what will create your feeling state. Disappointment is a feeling. It's a negative emotion. It's usually wrapped up with sadness, anger, frustration, things like that. And it happens when your expectation isn't satisfied. You wanted something to go a certain way, and it didn't. And when things don't work out the way you want them to, that's when you can really feel it. You can really feel disappointment. Now, as you know, thoughts create feelings. So your thinking is what is creating the way you're feeling. Now, once you understand what's going on and why you feel disappointed at any level, what can you do about it? Well, one thing to do is to decide if you like your reasons for feeling disappointed. Just gaining awareness of what's going on and why you feel the way you feel will help you process your emotions. So just take a look. Decide if you like your reasons for feeling disappointed. Now, the next thing, number 2, is to honor your feelings. Allow yourself to be where you are at emotionally. You may have heard the expression, feel your feelings. That means to really notice what you're feeling, actually focus on your feelings individually. So if you're feeling anger, take a look at that. If you're feeling disappointment, take a look at that. If you're feeling sad, really focus in on that. So look at your feelings individually, pull them apart, and see what you can learn from them. Maybe what you believe. Maybe you can learn more about that. Maybe what you really care about. When you can gauge your emotions, you can like really take a look and see, oh wow, I feel really strongly about that. That's really triggering this disappointment. And you might also learn more about your reactions. You might learn more about what you're actually doing. What actions are you taking? What are you doing or not doing? So by slowing down and honoring your feelings and really looking at your feelings individually, you can see a lot more and you can learn a lot more. You can also Google and check out something called a feelings chart or a feelings wheel. And this will help you because I've heard from a lot of people in my community. Sometimes we just get hung up on the feelings we're very familiar with. But when you look at a feelings list, you get, just more awareness of the subtlety of the emotions, and that can really help you label what you're actually feeling. So that's a really good thing to check out. Okay, a third thing that you can do is to be curious and open. You can start to gain a broader perspective about what happened and ask yourself if there's any part of it that you're interested in looking at differently. Now, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can. So ask yourself, is there something that you can learn? Is there something that you want to do? Is there someone that you can help? Is there someone that you want to talk to get help? Is there any other way to think about it that's useful to you? Really good things to ask and just be curious. Number 4, be compassionate with yourself. Be kind to yourself as you process how you're actually feeling. Take care of yourself. Be nice to yourself. Be sweet to yourself. Notice what you need during this difficult time. Don't minimize what you're going through. Allow it and be compassionate. Number 5, be aware of when you start to feel that feeling disappointed is no longer serving you. Sometimes feelings like disappointment, anger, and sadness can be motivating. They can help you get clarity about what you want to do next, even though you're disappointed. Like in my examples, you can get to a point where you can hold space for both emotions. You can still be incredibly disappointed, and be able to focus on moving forward in a way that makes sense to you. So just be aware of that. Sometimes feeling disappointed is exactly where you need to be. You need to process your feelings. You need to increase your awareness and do all the things we talked about. But it does get to a point, like I mentioned in that COVID example when I wanted to be in Italy, it gets to a point where feeling disappointed is no longer serving you. So just be aware of that. And finally, number 6, connect with other like-minded people and people who get you. You know, it's a great time to feel support from people who love you. So there you have it. It's a beginning. It's just a short podcast episode after all. There are all levels of disappointment, and some take much longer to process than others. Disappointment can be difficult and painful. So you're not alone. There are things that you can learn from disappointment, but it really can be difficult and painful, and that's okay. You're allowed to feel. Feeling is good. Everything is not skippity-doo-dah. It really is a part of life, and like I mentioned, you're not alone. You're never alone. And if this podcast has taught you anything, it's that. So give these ideas a try, and hopefully they'll help you just get perspective and a bit more clarity about what's on your mind and heart when it comes to how disappointed you're feeling and where you want to go from here. Okay, that is it for this episode. Now, as you know, this podcast is all about how to love your life again after 50, including disappointment. It's really all about coaching you to be more intentional and to incorporate mindfulness into your life as a regular practice. This is how to put yourself on your agenda. My focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so that you don't have regrets. I can help you create the confidence, courage, and meaning that you're looking for. So if you're ready to take a step, you're invited to book your momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com, and we will chat. You can also head over to www.talktosusie.com, whatever is easier for you to remember. One more thing, you're also invited to purchase my new masterclass, Get Unstuck, Midlife Clarity Fast and Easy, where you can get clear about your next chapter priorities without spin, confusion, and overwhelm in less than an hour. Head over to www.midliferoadmap.com. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 382. You'll also see links there for the new show, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.